In a small village of Yamura, a man wakes up in the care of Iruru, an apprentice healer, with a strange mask stuck to his face and forgotten memories. He's confused and injured. Once better, Iruru's grandmother, the chief of the village, lends him her deceased son's clothes, making him unusually resemble him. As he heads out with Iruru's assistance, he explores, growing curious seeing others appear different from him and have animal features. Impulsively, he touches Iruru's tail, making her go beet red and pushing him away, embarrassed. The two meet the jolly Teoro and his wife, learning about the village and the recent earthquake it faced. While taking a break, Nwangi, Iruru's childhood friend and son of the king's younger brother, makes rounds gathering the hefty yearly tribute. He's grown to be obnoxious, often speaking ill of his birthplace Yamura. Upon seeing Iruru, he forces her to go with him, trying to seduce her with luxuries. However, the man protects her, declaring her family and causing Nwangi to go crazy jealous, and he and his friends at East Mash, one of the holy shrines in the forest, awaken the forest guardian Mutakapa. At Iruru's, the man still has not regained his memories and feels the strange heat sickening him again. Unknown to them, the Mutakapa enrages outside. Nwangi's recklessness has led the village into chaos. Even after repairing the shrine, the Mutakapa continues to attack, killing the innocent villagers. Refusing to sit idle, the man rushes up to the beast as Iruru tearfully follows. Luckily, they are saved as the beast retreats once it rains. Back at the chief's, the village mourns. The man enters, revealing that the beast repulses being wet and volunteers to defeat it. The following day, together with Teoro and the villagers, he lures the Mutakapa into a trap filled with water, impaling her to death. The group, under his leadership and plan, restores peace, returning victorious. Surprisingly, they find an erratic Iruru searching for her missing little sister Iruru. To everyone's relief, they find her with a bulge on her stomach, claiming it's her baby. However, out falls a small Mutakapa kitten. Seeing that it's just a cub, the man reasons that small lives are pure, convincing the village to readily accept the little cat. With the village rejoicing and celebrating his bravery, the chief finally gives him a name, Hakuoro, the name of Iruru's and Iruru's father. Hakuoro blends well, helping villagers with his medicinal knowledge. One night after the chief sheltered a group of battle-torn men, Iruru worriedly wakes Hakuoro up, telling him that Grandma has gone missing. While searching, Hakuoro is ambushed by swordsman Oboro and his two minions. Just as he intends to kill him, Grandma suddenly shows up, scolding Oboro. She informs Hakuoro that she had willingly left to help Oboro's sister, Yuzuha, in his secretive village. Much to Oboro's dislike, the chief brings Hakuoro along and arrives at the village, tending to Yuzuha, a poor little sickly blind girl. While Grandma has a word with Oboro, Hakuoro and Yuzuha get familiar, making friends. Later on, they return back to Uru, and in the morning the villagers strangely receive a load of replenishing cargo, secretly paid by Oboro and his village. However, it's not long before the chief is called again. Hakuoro and her arrive to see Yuzuha fighting for life. Luckily, they manage to help using an expensive medicine. However, Yuzuha will relapse again and again, meaning the medicine ever more. To gain more funds, Oboro resorts to stealing from the lord's mansion, coming across the samurai General Banai, who injures him. In the morning, while playing with the Mutakapa cub, Iruru and Hakuoro find the collapsed Oboro. Once better with their care, Oboro is indebted to Hakuoro and leaves. Nwangi returns, this time with his father Lord Sasanti, loudly accusing the village of sheltering the thief. As the hassle intensifies, one of the soldiers gravely injures the chief. As the lord runs away, scared of the tiny Makapa cub, worried the village gathers while Iruru and Iruru desperately try to save their grandma. However, she's aware that her time's up. Leaving her granddaughters with Hakuoro, she sadly passes away. Hakuoro soon delivers the news to Oboro, who grows enraged at himself for bringing such a calamity and leaves to confront the lord himself. Meanwhile, the mourning villagers, knowing well of Hakuoro's character, ask him to succeed the late chief. Seeing the villagers, the sheltered soldiers, and Oboro's minions all stand in unison at the decision, Hakuoro accepts. Under him, the men leave to join Oboro, Infuriated villagers break into the mansion, wreaking havoc. As Oboro's chained below freeing himself, he joins Hakoro and the villagers. Together they attack Sasant, who cowers like a dog yelling for his son. However, Hakoro stabs him swiftly with the bladed fan the chief herself had bestowed him. Meanwhile, Nwangi flees, enraged at Hakoro. As the mansion falls to villagers, it seems like Banai the samurai withheld backup. Victorious, the village is now at the mercy of the imperial court. They will surely come after them. Anticipating the imperial army's arrival any time, the village prepares for the clash as Makuru grows hungrier than usual, even frustratedly fumbling with Aru and leaving her almost bare-chested bad kitty. Even Oboro arrives with Yuzuha, being indebted to Hakoro. He declares him his brother and joins with his people to prepare for the battle. As Iruru and Aruru make friends with Yuzuha, Oboro reveals that it was Yuzuha's wish to come here. Later on, Aruru and Hakoro find a doubtful Aruru hiding something. Pulling her aside, they find Makuru munching on the stalks, now a massive mutakappa. Soon, Hakoro and Oboro explore for villages to ally with, coming across the deadly scene of an innocent village torched to ash. Banai and his men emerge from the smoke, immediately admitting a clash as Hakoro battles Banai and Oboro with Banai's right-hand Kuru. On the brink of defeat, Aruru erupts as Makuru and Aruru spring, defending Hakoro. Stunned seeing a mutakappa, Banai decides to retreat, but not before acknowledging Hakoro. Back at the imperial court, Banai kneels before the king as he selfishly summons Nwangi, putting him in charge instead. With Nwangi as the new head general, he's being a literal pain in the ass, insulting Ku, Banai's right hand, into joining him, only to scatter off when faced with brute strength. Meanwhile, Hakoro, Oboro, and Tioro have been gathering allies, with more villages joining them at the news of Banai torching one. As they sit chatting, Urbaru brings in an awkward man claiming to be a frequent merchant at the mansion. Clumsily, he showcases his goods, even presenting a not-so-appropriate item to Aruru before being escorted out by Hakoro. On his way, he suspiciously changes his demeanor, brandishing a dagger and mentioning the expensive medicine Oboro searches for, before returning to his clumsy self. Out at the checkpoints, Banai and Kuru are alerted. Within the shadows, the same merchant appears, passing information to Banai. However, a survivor from the checkpoint stumbles at Hakoro's, making the villagers even more angered. Hakoro launches an attack and is surprised upon finding Banai and Kuru there. Although it seems as if Banai would triumph, as more villagers joined Hakoro, Banai once again retreats defeated. At the imperial court, Banai is shoved into dungeons for returning vanquished and questioning the king's reckless attacks on innocent villages as Nwangi takes reins. Hakoro's forces strengthen, speedily taking over the country and now confident to break into the imperial city. Unknown to them, Nwangi has joined the stupid king's reckless antics of battering all villages, even innocent ones, so they don't stand against him. While Hakoro visits Yuzuha, Oboro rushes with the news. Headed by Nwangi, the imperial forces are about mass slaughter. When Hakoro's men sprint onto them, making their forces cowardly retreat, however, the idiots sure drop their own commander behind. Fallen off his pedestal, Nwangi is captured, the rats finally found, tied and ready to be beheaded, and Nwangi is still a pain. Lucky for him, Hakoro lets Aruru take the decision, and the sweet girl frees him. Now stronger than ever, Hakoro's forces confidently invade the imperial city and wreak mayhem. Kuru rushes to the dungeons, freeing Banai. Avoiding Hakoro, Banai goes to the king, raising his blade to slay him. As the lewd king begs, reasoning there are so many women to play with. Just as Hakoro enters, Banai kills the king, placing the blade on his own neck before Hakoro swats it away, refusing for him to end. Together the two walk out, announcing the fall of the emperor as the people erupt rejoicing. With the dawn of a new empire, Hakoro is crowned king. Soon, the Ankamunkai arrive, mediators from the temple of Witzel Namida, the people's god. As representatives of the temple, Princess Oratory and a temple teacher Mudo arrive at the new kingdom. Meeting Hakoro and Banai, they put forward the proposal of friendship and act in the future as their mediators. The two are shown around by Iruru, whom the princess mistakes for Hakuro's queen. Meanwhile, Hakuro, while on a break, comes across another winged animecaps, later finding her asleep in his bed. Sensing the familiar aura, Oratori enters, catching her and informing Hakuro that she's her little sister Kamyu who had followed her. With his good heart, Hakuro allows her in, and soon Kamyu blends together with Aruru and Yuzuha, making friends and playing till exhausted. Seeing the kingdom happy and satisfied themselves, the animecaps soon leave, certain of their new friendship with the kingdom of Tusker. Hakuro has done well. However, all kingdoms do not happily accept the new kingdom of Tusker, and soon a hostile message is sent from Nui, the emperor of Shikarpichum. It demands Tusker to be ruled under them or to fall in battle. With the best of his character, Hakuro tries to settle Yun, scolding Oboro, who's always quick with his anger and protective of his brother Hakuro. But despite Hakuro receiving the envoys respectfully and peacefully, Nui attacks Tusker's checkpoints, alarming Hakuro. Now serving Hakuro, Banai soon gathers forces, lining the fort and preparing for the attack. Nui's parties soon march onto them, with Kuru and Banai fending them off. Meanwhile, together with his minions, Oboro secretly infiltrates the fallen castle. As Hakuro overlooks, waiting for his plan to go into action, he finds Aruru and Iruru have followed him. Soon the castle goes ablaze with a concoction bursting, and Nui's forces are trapped. Hakuro marches onto them, defeating the masses as Nui himself shows up, face to face. Nui warns that he shall meet him again before retreating. One night, as the sea rages under the thunderous weather, a trafficking ship is caught in the waves. Abandoning the abducted, sailors flee, not before a rabid girl, one of the seas, escapes as well, killing all the sailors ashore. By the time Hakuro's forces arrive, they find bloodshed and the collapsed girl. Bringing her in, they lock her up, but the girl Kerala breaks through, showing up before Hakuro. Her skills surely please Kuru. However, Hakuro receives her warmly, asking Iruru to tend to her injuries. Being her clever self, Kerala easily decodes Iruru's love for Hakuro, making her blood red. Upon Iruru's requests, Kerala's allowed out and adjusts quite well, avoiding Kuru's failed advances, brazenly drinking sake in broad daylight, and making friends with Oratori herself. For her skills, Hakuro decides to give her command, but not before Banai assesses her. The soldiers gather as the two faces each other. Kerala is not an easy opponent, but Banai is still a hailed samurai and comes out victorious. However, she fought skillfully. Accepting command, Kerala orders her weapon, an extremely massive sword that even breaks Kuru's sweat, but the goblin woman lifts it easily, leaving everyone dumbfounded. At last, Kerala has found an abode out of shackles. With the threat of Nui attacking any minute, Hakuro seeks alliances with other countries, having Oratori act as the mediator. While at an official gathering to seal in the alliance, an exasperated Toro enters, calling for Hakuro and yelling that Yamura is under attack. Sliding down the post he's leaning on, the jolly Toro passes away, joining his wife and others of fallen Yamura. Outside, Hakuro finds the enemy right upon his door and defeats them, realizing that it's not Nui's forces, but Kachikechan's. The soldiers strangely seem almost tranced into madness. Hakura himself is speechless. It seems that the situation is connected to Hakuro's past, which he does not remember. He must have committed something so grave as to turn the people of Kachikecha into maniacs and fill them with hatred for him. With no luck in mediating and receiving a dying messenger back, Hakura decides to attack. Together, Hakuro's forces march onwards. On their way, Mukuru senses something odd, and within a second, Hakuro is surrounded by the maniac forces. A strange girl, Tuka, and a man claiming to be Hakura's brother-in-law aim to slay him. They call him Rakshane. The man, Lord Orkaken, claims Hakuro's identity is of an evil man, Rakshane, who had ruthlessly killed his people, wife, even his children, dead set to not let him survive in the name of justice. On Tuka's advice, Orkaken decides to retreat. As Hakuro himself returns back stunned, he's tied to the bow and collapses into sleep, having strange nightmares of being surrounded by those he must have killed. Meanwhile, Oboro scouts the area for the opponent forces when he once again comes across Tuka. However, she is alone, and he combats her solitarily, only to lose. Heading back, Tuka gives him the message that justice shall win. Gathering willpower, Hakuro once again marches for the enemy with his troops to an integral bridge used by them. At the mouth of it, they are met with Tuka but manage to overpower her till she stands alone. Despite Hakuro asking her for clarity, she maintains that he's an evil man. Her unrelenting behavior leads Kerala to combat her and slash the bridge off. As Tuka collapses into the ditch with it, the situation is too intense for poor Hakuro, and he falls under tremendous trance-like stress, wondering who he really is. Aruru is worried seeing the man who she's known to be selfless and brave, doubting his unknown past. As the news of Lord Recap-Kun and Tuka, an even cleverer warrior of justice, makes rounds, Hakuro's people grow uneasy, questioning if he's a good man. Hakuro was immensely demoralized, making Kerala push Aruru to take advantage of the situation and console the sad man to love. However, without motive, Aruru hugs Hakuro, easing and assuring him he'll always be supported and loved by her as Hakuro and never Rakshane. Feeling a bit better, Hakuro has some leisure time fooling around with Aru, Makru, and Aru, but it doesn't last long. Hakura's forces gather back, and soon they head out to face the Kacha-Ketchans. Entering the battlefield, Hakuro's forces once again clash with the enemy. On motive, Hakuro withdraws, making Recap-Kun and Tuka follow him. Once alone, Recap-Kun prepares to kill him, but Hakuro smashes him to the ground, demanding to be told of his past. Sprawled, Recap-Kun taunts him for being evil, and Hakuro, who strangely starts feeling unstable, has his body heating up. Upon seeing Hakuro heating up, Recap-Kun's demeanor changes as he gets terrified. Before Hakuro can react, an arrow flies through Recap-Kun's throat, killing him right there. It's Nu cackling. Nu calls at Hakuro, saying he purposefully agitated the Kacha-Ketchans against him before riding away. Although Hakuro returns safely with his troops, Nu is preparing for much mischief. Nu has launched attacks on the villages of Tusker left and right, trying their level best to incite Oboro and Kuru, who are clearly irritated. However, Hakuro has caught on to Nu's antics and chooses to strengthen border defense instead of invading Shikar-Pakhim. Earnestly, Hakuro asks Oboro and others to trust his plan, as Nu, on the other hand, greedily awaits Hakuro to transform into his true beast. He wants to acquire him. With effectively defending borders, Nu decides to advance offensively. He gathers his elite troops, and together with them, he marches into Tusker, burning and killing all villages and innocents they come into contact with, ruthlessly and with no remorse. With the chaos growing extreme, Hakuro decides on a very risky plan to allow Nu's forces into Tusker until Shikar-Pakhim is drained of its cavalries, and then invade the castle at Shikar-Pakhim, taking Nu's head. For now, as they battle, surprisingly Tuka joins them for being indebted to Hakuro for releasing her and paying respect to Recap-Kun's body. Together, Hakuro's forces once again drive the enemy to the borders. With thousands of innocent lives fallen, Hakuro decides to leave the troops under Banai and invade Shikar-Pakhim to kill Nu himself. On the border, a massive army of Shikar-Pakhim awaits, making Banai desperately count on Hakuro. Meanwhile, Hakuro smashes into Nu's castle, with Kerala being her cocky self handling the three elite warriors of Nu. Tuka and Iruru advance inside. Within the castle, Nu unleashes his trump card onto them. Armored men turned into soulless, zombie-like maniacs. Cackling, Nu reveals that they are elite soldiers from his invasions, turned maniacs by triggering the beast in them. However, the beast he wishes to acquire the most is Hakuro. As Kerala enters, providing much-needed backup, Hakuro and Iruru go after Nu. However, the madman Nu sets his own country on fire, burning his own people to trap Hakuro from escaping. Seeing Nu's madness, the beast in Hakuro starts erupting. Enraged, she goes after Nu alone as the mental king seems to almost drool at the sight of his beast breaking through. Pushed to the brink, Hakuro transforms into an unsightly being, shredding Nu to threads of flesh. He stands stricken at the sight of his own work. The rain pours down as Hakuro steps out victorious among the seas of bodies. Tusker has won again, But at what cost? And what has it awakened? The war and its horrors melt away as the country begins restoring itself. Hakuro even sends for help to re-establish the government at Kacha Kacha. For his kind gesture, Tuka has become one of Hakuro's loyal comrades. Peace once again allows children to play carelessly. Of course, Aruru and Mukuru now join with the mischievous Kerala to resume their plundering of food stocks. That's before they're caught red-handed, though. Among all the bliss, however, Hakuro is silently suffering. Nightmares of the fateful burning war keep returning to him as New taunts him of the beast he is. One sleepless night, he comes across Camus, strangely drinking, constantly unable to quench her thirst. He worries, but Oratori hurriedly takes her away, unaware he's being spectated by a strange man. Unable to face his misery of the events at Shikar pack him and decide for the survivors of it, Hakuro returns to the ruins. As he stands berating himself, Iruru once again makes him hopeful for the coming tomorrow. East, he lets the survivors return and rebuild their ruined homeland. Once again wandering at night, he again finds Camus playing around with something unworldly when a strange man reveals himself, introducing himself as Jinjimaru. He takes Hakuro to meet his ruler, and outsteps a veiled person, Kuya, the ruler of Kanekaman. Meeting Hakuro, Kuya immediately reveals that he's had an investigation done on him and knows a lot. However, he's curious as to how he led such small people to huge rebellions and took big empires, wondering if he has powers due to being a Kanaidii. Seeing Hakuro confused, he explains that Kanaidius are under the divinity of God on Tedekam, the true god who was overthrown by Witzel Nimida, the god of misfortune. With Hakuro pondering over the news, his land is quite blissful. One day, Hakuro is presented with a rare creature, Mukum, a creature thought to be able to cure all illnesses. Immediately, Oboro wills to buy it for Yuzuha. Seeing Oboro so serious as to get it for Yuzuha, Hakuro buys it for him, and immediately Aruru renames it Gakitara. Later, Oboro drunkenly thanks Hakuro before his minions take him away. Hakuro returns to meet Kuya. Talking again, he embarrassingly listens to more information about him, particularly about having lots of women he isn't even aware of himself. That's when Kuya removes the veil, showing herself. She's a beautiful girl, not a boy. Hakuro and his friends, sick feasting, are delivered a message regarding the rebellion moves of slaves in Medtuk led by Delahari. It seems to have caught Kerala's eye. That night, she enters Hakuro's quarters, all dressed, requesting him to help the rebels of Natuk. Upon accepting, she stands up, to Hakuro's astonishment, removing her attire to pay him back. That is not what he thought repayment is. Worse, they are caught by Iruru herself. Surely Hakuro gets a serious silent treatment in the following days. In addition to the chaos, Hakuro is abducted by Kerala and Oratori, and the whole platoon, including Camus, Nidaha, Tuka, Mukuru, and Gakitara, decides to go on the journey. On their way, Iruru and Hakuro luckily clear misconceptions just before they are surrounded by Delahari and his troops. It turns out he's Kerala's brother, unaware that she's his sister. At night, as she reconciles with Katamar, fires waft from Delahari's settlement. Immediately, Hakuro's friends assail Natuk's attack, fending them off, but Delahari is not pleased with the assistance. It is a lesson from Kerala, but the boy is quite stone-head. However, dismissing Delahari, Katamar asks Kerala and her friends to help in the rebellion. Now with added help, Delahari advances on Natuk's troops, coming out victorious. Although he's a bit irritated by the experience and wise fighters Hakuro and his friends are, he soon grows up to them. From her past, Kerala remembers an underground route via waterway into the castle, hence they decide to break in from the underways, while Delahari's troops fight outside. As Hakuro and the rest get into the castle, shocked, they are met with the sight of thousands of Laramanio new blossoms growing from human bodies as a madman. The ruler of Matuk, Sankasu, sits on his throne surrounded by them. Upon seeing Kerala, he calls her real name, Keralostir, leaving Delahari ajar from realization. Declaring his love for her, he reveals that he killed Chaos only for her to return. Charging, Kerala and Delahari kill Sankasu, but before Delahari can get a chance to reunite with his sister, he's hurried off to help the rest of the men. Days later, Delahari visits Tusker, thanks the Emperor for his aid, and is taken aback when Hakuro walks in. Paying his respects, he leaves as Kerala watches her brother go well and strong. A clumsy little girl, Sakuya, breaks into Hakuro's place, stumbling into Hakuro's quarters accidentally. Luckily, he sends the soldiers off. Sakuya introduces herself as Kuya's representative. He follows her to Kuya, but doesn't go unnoticed. Sneaking behind a tree, she watches him and accidentally shrieks when Kuya suggests Hakuro take a wife from her country, getting herself caught. However, Kuya implies Sakuya is a perfect candidate, making her redder than blood and reasoning that she's great in bed. That surely made everyone uncomfortable because the girl clearly doesn't know the meaning. However, there's much going on in Kuya's land, and they're engaged in a possible war. One evening, Hakuro astonishingly finds a collapsed Irura bitten by Camus. Upon finding her, he sees Camus terrified and confused by her own actions. However, Iruru, being a good friend, never forsakes her. Meanwhile, the situation at Kunkamoon is intensifying, since the Kuin Kamoon holds the frightening massive bots capable of swiping the troops clean in one go. Soon Hakuro falls in a tough spot when Elmu reaches him to mediate between them and Kunkman, begging that they had no intention of attacking it. Despite oratory mediating from Hakuro's side, Kunkman rejects it, highlighting their blasphemous god Witzel Namida, and continues to attack Elmu. It turns out that it's not Kuya who is giving out the ruthless order to invade and kill in the land of Elmu, but a troublesome fellow, Huanqua. Disturbed a bit, Kuya reaches out to Hakuro, and being a good friend, he earnestly tells her to seek much-needed advice from those she loves, like Sakuya and Jinjimaru, similar to how he seeks his from Uru. Although Kuya returns determined, more states start attacking Kunakuma. Under immense stress, she finally falls to Huanqua's manipulation, ordering bloodshed across lands. The Kunkaman bots start trampling through empires after empires, even taking down the empire of Enkamiya Mukai, where they are helped by a strange Mandi. Soon, Kunkman marches for Hakuro's door as well. Concerned for his people, Hakuro empties the capital as Oboro, Banai, Kuru, Kerala, and others stand waiting until the formidable bots show up in Tusker. Moonbots arrive before Hakuro's force, wreaking havoc. With the conditions at the front plummeting, Hakuro rides back to handle the situation himself. He appears before the Huanqua, making him grow maniacally delighted at the sight. Attempting to pull him away, Hakuro retreats, but Huanqua catches up, attacking him. Before Huanqua can harm him, Aruru and Makuru appear. All of a sudden, events take a dire turn when Huanqua brutally hits Aruru to death. The sight of her is enough to make Hakuro tremble. Shaking in devastation, he holds her close as Huanqua heartlessly stomps on him, all spectated by a horrified Aruru who is searching for Aruru. Unaware, Huanqua has triggered something far more formidable than the bots. Black miasma erupts from under him as his bot starts crumpling like bread, and out emerges a massive creature. He pins Huenko's bot, bursting his head like a bubble as Huengwa falls out wailing for his mommy, with the situation ending in such a twist of events that Hakuro wakes up in his quarters having another one of his nightmares. Upon Eru entering, he worriedly asks for Aurora only to find her playing outside. Estranged, Mandi has seen the events unfold with Kuya lost and pressing the war forward. He seems to be planning for more chaos to come, and Jinjimaru is aware of it. Meanwhile, Hakuro is confused at what had happened to him and how Aru is alive. He suffers visions of being in a lab-like place, seeing a test subject girl resembling Iru, but named Mikoto, and a man with a similar mask to his named Hakuro as well. It's not long before Jinjimaru stumbles in asking for help and allying with Hakuro. With him by his side, Hakuro decides to rescue the High Priest Oratory and Camus's father first. One night, as Aruru tends to Hakuro's wounds, he reminds her of the first time she cared for him, asking her to always be by his side. This makes her go quiet as she holds an unspoken secret and might have formed a pact with the creature Hakuro transformed into to save Aru's life. However, Oratory, being a priestess, knows all and honestly tells her to live as herself. Soon the men and Jinjimaru return with the High Priest. Now, as a High Priest, Oratory mediates and gathers the children of Witzel Namida to help against the bloodshed of Kunkman. This time, Hakuro marches with his troops towards Kunkumen, defeating the bots with Jinjimaru's guidance. While fighting, Hakuro and Jinjimaru are strangely teleported inside the castle, and before Kuya, she is still in her antics. However, after a clash of brute force, Hakuro manages to calm her. With Kuya fallen, the mysterious man D finally shows up together with his two minions, including the rabid Hwankua. Immediately, Oratori recognizes him, a fellow philosopher on Kamaya Mukai, who had gone missing. D confronts Jinjimaru for defying his pact, who has realized that Ururu holds a similar pact as well, making everyone else confused as to what they're talking about. As the situation intensifies, Oratori teleports everyone to safety, and Hakuro's beast once again starts pulsating. He transforms into his massive self, making poor Huinkwa piss his pants, bringing him down for good. As Hakuro fights, Camus appears from behind a post, asking D to stop, but the man summons a girl named Mutsumi, his daughter, and Camus transforms into a different girl, attacking Hakuro head-on. Seeing the situation, Jinjimaru sacrifices himself, causing D to withdraw and leave the land in flames as Hakuro, back to his normal self, carries an injured 2-year out. Finally, Oratori explains the confusion to Hakuro, clarifying that a spirit of the Onkamumukai ancestor often reincarnates in their bodies, this time, canvases, so that it can be with the god Witzel Namina. D himself happens to be Witzelan Amida, and the beast within Hakuro is another manifestation of Witzel Namida. Sensing he'll be gone in this war, Hakuro asks Abura to succeed him if anything is to happen and decides to set out alone to bring Camus back. But how can his trooper friends let their beloved leader go alone? Together they march to Enkamaya Mokai under Oratori's guidance. Once they enter, they are immediately ambushed by unworldly attacking blobs as Kemu, or should I say Mutsumi, leads them. Hakuro follows her, coming to a dead end, and is hit with another vision of the lapse. There, the doctor, referring to Hakuro as Iceman, allows him to escape with Mikoto. As the vision fades, Mutsumi attacks again. However, Aru calls out to Camus, making Mutsumi collapse in a struggle. Before they can pry Camus back, D appears. Hakuro turns into the beastly creature, nullifying the pact with Ururu to save Ururu and setting them free. As D himself transforms, the two zoom into the sky ready to clash, engaging in the final clash between the two versions of Witzel Nemida. D and Hakuro immerse in a frightening clash, hitting each other with full force. While clashing, D relentlessly tries to justify his acts of inciting wars as being done in favor of his children, the followers of Witzel Nemida. However, Hakuro denies accepting brazen bloodshed. Soon, he realizes that the two of them are splits of the same body of the god Witzel Nemida, and decides to rejoin himself with D and ultimately end him. As D charges, stabbing his armed hand into Hakuro's torso, Hakuro cleverly takes the hit, beginning to co-join with D's body, swooshing his bladed arm at his neck and beheading the giant beast of D. Engulfed in a tornado of miasma, Hakuro stands solitary, joined with Witzel Neiman's other half. His beastly self stands before Araru and Uhuru as the poor girls cry for him. Once Camus is back, he asks Oratori to seal him away, wishing to put an end to the mayhem. Oratori chants as Hakuro's friends charge, slashing, attacking, and assailing Hakuro's beast as it flashes and is sent to the beyond. Before Hakuro's soul goes along, he says his last words to each and every one of his friends, especially Araru, who at last confesses her love for him before he walks away. Running towards him, she engulfs Hakuro, giving him their first and last goodbye kiss. With Hakuro gone, Aburo takes the throne of Tusker, and the country returns to its peace.